Welcome to the webinar Discovery and Strategy brought to you by Acro Media. My name is Jeff and I will be your host today. We are going to be taking a look at the technical and or creative planning phases that go into a pre-build for a website. And this can be an end-to-end infrastructure of a website at an entire level or granular, meaning that we have an aspect of an existing architecture that needs improvement or new functionality to the site. In both cases, the planning and discovery phase will take place before any development happens. This will allow key stakeholders to understand what it will take to fulfill a project while properly outlining the goals and objectives to a technical level that can be used towards an RFP or, say, an RFQ. So to break this down a different way, the DNS project helps companies visualize and strategize anything from new development or replatforming a full website to fixing or changing functionality that might be broken or needs improvement on an existing. Both can be broken down workflows internally and externally. So an example might be externally would be a UX design, and I'll use the example of a vacation company that needs to take their customer through an ideal workflow to get them to the best results possible without giving them too many choices or without taking too many choices away and not allowing them to convert to business. Technical aspect of this may be a customer comes onto the site and they need to be getting a deal, potentially due to how long they've been with a member or how much they're purchasing. And so we need to be mapping the calls to third-party software, which information is going to be needed, and what chain of events is going to take place to be able to put that discount through to fulfillment. It's important to note as well that Acro Media has the ability to fulfill the technical architecture and creative aspects of the build once the DNS is complete. However, this presentation is going to be focusing solely on the planning phase. And before we go any further into the webinar, let's talk a little bit about Acro Media. So Acro is a digital commerce consulting agency that works with clients who are feeling frustrated with their commerce infrastructure. Usually that stems from a mess of multiple third-party integrations. This can also be overly complicated workflows that are burning through time, energy, and resources. These challenges are typically from accelerated growth on a platform that works well in the beginning when selling simpler, but of course as growth happens, so do the complications of a website. Acro helps by developing open source solutions with a flexible architecture that allows clients to simplify the management of their backend, integrate new, existing, and legacy softwares while moving forward with an open source project that would be different from the conformity of traditional out-of-the-box platforms. And I'm going to be your host today, Jeff Schaffner. I am a senior business developer with Acro Media. I have over 5 years working with small, medium, and enterprise level businesses and have facilitated quite a few of the discovery and strategy phases internally here with the company. I've done several webinars and seminars in the past, as well as being the host of Exploring E-commerce, which is a podcast that discusses all things commerce related and is entering its second season now. So let's go ahead and get started. Just before we do, if there are any questions that pop up during the webinar, we will look to answer them at the end. And if we're not able to get to your question just due to time, then of course we'll look to reach out to you via email and get those answers over to you. So moving on, we have the Acro purpose-driven development method. And as you can see here, this is going through the different waves or just different blocks or different steps of what you would be doing as you're moving through the process of planning, designing, developing, and launching a new website. Phase 2, as you see the blues and the greens there, we won't be going into today since that's a lot of execution that's quite typical in the industry at an elite level. But phase 1 is what we're going to dig into a little bit further, and that's going to be talking about the discovery, which is learning and knowledge share between the decision makers of the company and the development agency, and then strategies, which is the steps that we're going to be taking to execute the ideal plan once we're moving into the design and development phase. So let's go ahead and get into step 1, which will be discovery. And as I just said before, this is a lot of the information and data gathering and communication between the two sides. Some of these bullets that you'll see here would be pretty typical of what you'd see at the beginning of a project. maybe you'd be doing an analytics review or taking a closer look at the brand if that was a core competency of your business. But also in this case, and just a couple pieces we're going to look a little closer at would be the project canvas and the technical specification discovery. So that's more of the creative side of how we're going to be looking to do things, and then the technical side of how we'd be looking to execute. And so here we have the project canvas. The purpose of the project canvas is for both sides to be able to take a look and understand, everything that we're going to be doing on one page. So when we say, everybody needs to be on the same page, this is the page that we're looking to have them on. And just to go through a high level here and make sure that everybody understands kind of like what would be normal inside of a project, you usually find the purpose, which is something that would be fleshed out in the sales process, meaning that we're usually understanding the pains or challenges that a company is going through and the reasons why they're having to make those changes. We also have our what we consider to be the success criteria, and this is again reviewed by the company to agree upon to say yes, those are the key elements of conversion that we're looking to have, and make sure that the new website or new part of the build is going to be running that way. Then of course we have milestones. The milestones can actually change based on the discovery steps, and so if you're able to get into it and you find that an ERP has a dysfunctional workflow and is costing just a lot of time or a lot of errors, those kinds of things, then you might find that we might be looking to do a new ERP build or a new internal process build. And so the milestones can change, but that's to be found as we go through the process of this discovery. And then down below we have project risks, which is usually just feeling it and saying it and throwing down any potential red flags that one half of the project would feel against the other half. And so if we feel like there's been challenges with communication, then that might be something we would put down to make sure that we have a primary project manager on both sides that are doing their proper check-ins, etc. And then we have our constraints, things that we might have that are roadblocks along the way, and those are of course subject to change as the project moves along as well. The next page we're looking at here is the sitemap, and we're going to reference a company by the name of Icon, which does tattoo equipment for this page and then for a few others as well. The sitemap is going to be a page that's going to be a snapshot to look at where all the content is going to lie within a site. And what we're looking for here is to understand where a visitor's navigation paths are going to have to take place in order for us to get to what we would consider, or the company would consider, a conversion path. And what we mean by that is what you would tag Google Analytics for, but basically in this case we're looking at products being put into a shopping cart to check out, and that's what we're going to consider to be conversion, would be the process of a sale. Other companies may have additional conversion paths like a contact form or a web form, and that's to be determined here. A little side note is that the pins would represent a unique look to a particular page. While every page can't be a unique design, or that would be quite an expensive build, we do need to understand which pages are going to need to have some extra UX design to be able to make sure that those paths are converting at an optimum level. And for the next one, we have user stories. Now this is actually something that we're going to do with, I think every project needs to have them, and the business needs to take a good look at who their ideal client is and what the gambit would be for their clients or customers, and then we need to try and figure out a way to move them through the path from when they come to the site, what's the fastest way and what's going to be the best user experience for them to get through to a point of conversion. In this case we would be adding product details to a cart, and this could be a business to consumer or a business to business, and sometimes you're going to have actually a mix of the two. So a small example here is you might have somebody like Dylan, who's 28 years old and a tattoo artist, but further down the list you might end up with Stan, who's 56 years old and a tattoo shop owner. The difference may actually be all the way to the fact that somebody's doing bulk orders versus an individual, or maybe somebody likes to check out online while somebody else would want to talk to a customer service representative. There's nuances for these users, and we need to understand them to make sure that the user experience and the UX designer is creating the optimum path. So next up we have an example of a visualization or a viz, which has some similarities to a prototype or a working wireframe, but it's different in the fact that it is not using code to create a navigation path. And this is software done by a UX designer, and that's allowing key stakeholders or decision makers to understand and really go through the process of what a visitor or customer will be doing on the site. And if they need to make changes, it's a perfect way to A/B test. So let's take a deep dive into Icon here. Again, their tattoo equipment. And let's go ahead and click on some of the paths that they decided to break down. You'll notice that everything red in the visualization in this case, or potentially blue or another color, but whatever color it is, that's going to be what's clickable and what's able to be further explored. Other parts that'll be grayed out are probably going to go off of industry best practices, or could be content that's going to be filled up by the business owner, etc. So we'll go into the store in this case, and we'll give you an example of the tubes, tips, and grips. It's important to note that Icon has accounts, so this is meant to be a site that a customer can purchase and then go back and do reorders or look at past purchases, and that comes into even sales features that are like this just for you down in the corner that allows you to have items that have been purchased by you recently, recommendations for you based on previous products that you've purchased, or you can save your favorites, etc. The example I'm using on this page is that tubes, tips, and grips, can look similar, and that can be a challenge when we have a tattoo artist that's particular and wanting to make sure they're ordering the same product again. So what we did in this case, quite simply, is we made a graphic of some sort, and of course, keep in mind this is ugly, where this is just a black and white, very simplified prototype. So the website itself would still go through a creative phase, but important to note that we have an annotation here that says if the client mouses over this, they have the ability to understand that they've purchased this in the past, when they purchased it, and how much they purchased of this product, which helps them not have to call the customer service representatives to understand what they purchased in the past, really saving a lot of time and energy from the CSRs. So moving along now, we'll take a look at, we'll go into an account through a login. So up at the top here we have account, and we're going to go into dashboard, and some pretty normal stuff that you're going to see, which we'd break down, which would be the recent orders, which would allow people to have a quick reorder process. They can view the details there, and again we can click on that to see exactly how that's going to be broken down. But if we go back at this point, and you can print your receipts, of course, which is nice because these are all business owners and they're wanting to be able to submit their receipts at tax time. If we keep going down this, if we keep going down on the dashboard here, we're going to see cool new stuff that's going to be tagged specific to the customer's previous purchases, and that can be created through an algorithm that's going to tag based on previous orders, or it could be manually processed by the business itself. And then we even have running low on, which is an interesting feature. Since this is a returning customer, and they're going to be doing purchases for, say, gloves or tattoo ink as an example, we do have the ability to look and see when they order a product, and then the next time they order it, and then the next time, and then from there the system's able to actually pick up and understand when they may need to do another purchase, and that allows the company to do a push notification stating, hey, you're probably low on this ink at this time, or these gloves at this time. You might want to consider doing a reorder. Again, just enhancing the sales process and making sure that the client continues to come back to this company when they're ordering their products. And then another big challenge the business owners, tattoo artists had was actually at tax time. And so the last thing I'll show you is if a customer was going through their taxes, one of the things that they sometimes were challenged with was keeping themselves organized. And so Icon as a business, in February, March, those months, the CSRs, the customer service representatives, were inundated with conversations, and they were inundated with having to, manually process and send over all of the receipts broken down as all of these business owners would call them up. So that's obviously a large expense to the company. And what we were able to do is again go through the previous orders, as you'd see here if we were going through the orders page. But down below is kind of what's going to be what's unique in the fact that we would bundle up. Based on the year, we'd bundle up all of the orders that the client would have had, and all the way down to, again, for tax audits or tax purposes, a zip file that would show them an entire breakdown of all of their receipts. So something small here, but definitely very powerful to alleviate, again, a lot of time wasted by the company. So just going back to step 2, strategy phase, and just doing a recap, we had the information architecture, which is a sitemap, and taking you at a high level through the navigation of the site through conversion paths, visualization, which is similar to a prototype, only it's using software by a UX designer to make a clickable version of the site. And then now we're going to take you through the technical architecture. So next we're going to move into the technical specifications discovery. This page looks small, but it is a massive piece when we're talking about the discovery and strategy phase. So what we have to do here is we have to learn what we're going to build by conceptualizing and breaking down things like the data structure and the system integrations. So each bullet you see here can have its own planned out component or outcome of how it's going to communicate or pass information along a chain to deliver an outcome. Probably the best way to describe this page is through an example, and for that we can use the visualization we just talked about and showed a couple slides ago. So when the client's going to be logging in and taking a look at the receipts, behind the scenes the system needs to grab the data from somewhere, and we need to figure out, is it pulling the information from a local database or an external database connection or an API connection to a third party. In some cases it can even be multiple third-party systems. So it can be a batched file import as well. So there's a whole bunch of different things that can be going on there on how it's going to be communicating and pulling that information. Another question is, if it's currently in place, then is that the right way to be doing it? And that's often something that we're going to have to weigh the pros and cons for. So the goal in this case, of course, is to pull the right account information from the right timelines and give the right details in a timely fashion. I'll be able to give another example of this in a slide coming up, but as you can see here, anything from existing systems that we're working with and data migrations that are going to be moving over to new locations, these are all things that we're going to have an understanding for. We can't just say it's going to happen, it has to be mapped. Okay, so let's map out an example of technical architecture. And for this example, we're going to be using a telecom company dealing with a customer looking for a phone and or plan. And you can tell from the blue and the purple along the top that we have the front-end user experience, which is going to be fairly simple, bringing the customer through the site, adding products and plans to a carton, and of course checking out. The back-end integrations, of course, is where you're going to see we're going to show all the service calls and how they're going to be interacting with different database ERPs, and basically all the information and how it's going around. An analogy here could be like looking under the hood of an engine. We know the vehicle goes, but what is everything connected to? Another analogy might be an iceberg, where the customer is really going to just see the tip, but of course the bulk of the site is going to be beneath the surface. So the story here, say you come to the site and you create an account, or maybe do you already have one, and if you don't have one, of course, do you make an account right away? That's a whole UX thing that we would have talked about previously. But you pick a phone from an inventory, and then you pick variations. In this case, it could be the size and the storage and maybe the color, and then you need to pick a plan. And from the plans, of course, we can determine, are you existing? If you're existing, are you existing with a 10-year discount, with a family plan? Does this phone have a sale, or does it have a sale from a bundle? Like a buy a phone, get 50% off your headphones. Does the sale have a timeline? Does it have Could it be specific to a region? A good example would be like, is it for students and does it need to have any type of validation or verification? And if you're a new customer coming to the site, are you going to be getting a plan with that phone? Is that going to be giving you a discount off of the phone? Is that a 1-year plan, a 3-year plan, a new plan with a family? So multiple purchases picked up into there. And the list goes on and on. So all these need to be validated through the back end quickly, so that you can put these deals in front of the customer, and hopefully they can get themselves into a position where they can make a purchase and you can make a sale. And maybe after they've made the purchase, can they go back and log in to their now created account, and can they check the status of the phone? Has it been shipped? When's it going to be received by them? Can they make changes to the plan? Could they do a return on the product? Again, this list goes on, and as you can see here, hopefully the iceberg analogy is making itself present. There's so many different steps that need to be happening behind the scenes to make a smooth, fluid process for a customer to come onto your site and navigate through for whatever version of conversion that would be. And in this case, it would be purchasing a new phone and signing up for a new plan. And so that is bringing us to just about the end of the Discovery and Strategy webinar. We're into the resource section, and if you wanted to get a little bit more information about some topics that are relevant to what we've talked about today, then you might want to check out Becky's How to Plan for an Open Source Commerce, or Matt's Understanding Digital Commerce Architecture. And if what we said here today makes a lot of sense and you wanted to maybe take a closer look at your own company, you do have the ability to have a diagnostic tool or begin an assessment, and that'll allow you to dig into the operational workflow you have for your company currently, take a snapshot, and then might help you with existing improvements, or could help you plan for shifting and making a migration over to a new platform for further growth. And that is it. That brings us to the questions, the final page here on the webinar. If anybody has any questions, of course, you can, we'll answer some of them here today, but you can also feel free to give us a call, or you can reach out and email. Again, my name is Jeff Schaffner. I'm a senior business developer with Acro Media. You may also want to check out our website, where you can get some information, dig into some case studies, and even go through the assessment tool to get a better understanding of your operational workflows. Thanks very much for joining me. Appreciate it.